What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I'm Daniel Oyefusi. That is David Neal. Thanks so much for tuning in. Quick reminder before we start, make sure to subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, like, share, comment, as well as subscribe to the Miami Herald. Now, your Miami Dolphins responded to their fourth quarter collapse against the Titans in a big way. They had a short week of preparation. They had a couple players out, 9 starters to be exact, but it did not matter. They bounced back in a very convincing fashion, blowout, shutout fashion. As a matter of fact, 30-0 home win against the New York Jets. They sweep that season series. They improve to 10-4. And now we have arrived at the stretch of the season that we have all been eyeing for several weeks. Kind of crazy. We're here at week 16, coming up in a couple of days. The Dolphins are entering what will be a critical stretch against a trio of opponents with winning records. It starts with the Dallas Cowboys, and then up next is the Ravens in Baltimore on week 17, New Year's Eve. There's been a lot of questions and intrigue about whether that will get the Sunday Night Football flex treatment. The NFL has not yet announced whether or whether not it won't be flexed. Still a couple more days to decide whether that will be the case. And then obviously they wrap up the season against the Buffalo Bills at home. And look out for the Bills. They might be the hottest team in the NFL right now. They are nipping right behind the Dolphins, and it's really important that they win. We're going to talk about that. We got a lot to talk about. But we're going to start with that blowout shutout win. I think there were a lot of nervous fans in South Florida entering that game. They had already ruled out 2 starters. There were 2 starters already on IR. There were a handful of starters questionable to play, the most notable being Tyreek Hill. He warmed up, and then 90 minutes before kickoff, it turns out Tyreek Hill is inactive, missing his first game as a Dolphin since coming to Miami before the 2022 season, as well as Xavier Howard, as well as Javon Holland. There were a lot of guys who are not in the lineup for the Dolphins who are accustomed to seeing. So even against an undermanned, underperforming, just bad Jets team, frankly,
Yeah.
there were still
Let's be
yeah,
underperforming.
there
Come
were
on.
still a lot of nervous Dolphins fans out there, but very quickly they put any questions to bed. Dominant effort from the defense. Jalen Waddle, maybe kind of a breakout performance this season. Tua Tagovailoa has one of his best games, only 3 incompletions, and all is well in Dolphin land. I guess. I mean, I guess we're gonna find out this weekend
We
against
go. Yeah.
against the Cowboys. But I thought
Let's see.
I thought it was definitely like obviously it was a great win, blowout, shutout win. Of course, that's great. But I thought it was really important, and it was really impressive. Maybe not so like for the result, but like the manner in which they got there. The fact of the matter is, when we gave our predictions, this time last week, we didn't know that the Dolphins were going to be without 9 starters. If I knew beforehand the Dolphins were going to be shorthand, almost half of their projected week 1 starters, thought we may have got a much closer game. I think I said they were going to win by 14 points or so. I thought it'd definitely be closer to 1 score. But you really saw the difference in the opponents. And again, it wasn't so much like the result, but how they got there. The fact that the defense was still so dominant. Bradley Chubb was really just like coming into his own. Like he's like really officially in the stretch where like, all right, this is the player that we all expected. And then on offense, you don't have Tyreek Hill. Tua said before, he said, a couple of days before the game that, they got out of sorts when he was out there. I mean, I think you saw, without Tyreek Hill in practice, they were able to make some adjustments. They were able to get Jalen Waddle involved. They didn't run the ball well, but they did what they needed to do against this team. So, you look ahead to, this 3-game stretch, it's going to be telling one way or another because there's a wide range of outcomes. You can get the number 1 seed, you can win the division, but not be the number 1 seed. You could potentially not even win the division and be stuck into a wild card spot. I mean, the Dolphins are like almost assured a playoff spot, and they can clinch one this weekend with the win. So I'm not even but I'm not even gonna entertain the maybe like small less than 1% chance that they don't make the playoffs. But all signs point that this is going to be a team playing in the second week of January, or be in the big dance in the second week of January. So yeah, I mean, this final 3-game stretch is going to be very telling for the type of team you know, for the type of team that they will be going forward. Because I think that, you know, one way or another, we're going to kind of know about this team by the end of this 3-game stretch.
Well, definitely, obviously. I mean, they did what you're supposed to do against the Jets. You know, a team that has no offense, and they squashed them, and you know, so you know, this sets up, and also this stretch kind of, it wouldn't be surprising if they came out like 1-2, 2-1, because that's the way this NFL season's been. It's not, nobody's going one way or the other completely among the top teams. I mean, you know, Dallas, you know, everybody's like, oh my goodness, look
They
at
were,
Dallas.
but
They
before
just
this past
stomped.
Sunday, they were the
Yeah.
hottest team in the NFL.
They just punked Philadelphia. Man, that's that Dallas. Oh, and then they went into Buffalo and they got little boy. And, you know, so, and then you look at Buffalo and saying, well, are they getting it together now? It's entirely possible they are getting it together, but it's entirely possible you know, they come out and, you know, they look, they look like Dallas did this week, you know. Um, Baltimore has some consistency to them, and that's probably why if you had to pick a best team right now in the AFC, you'd probably pick Baltimore because they are the most consistent team, it seems. But that's certainly not a team that you look at and, you know, they've got holes. So, uh, and they've had some, you know, some kind of strange performances. So, yeah, we're going to find out about the Dolphins that, you know, it just, uh, the only concern is if they lose all three. I mean, like you said, they're
Well,
pretty
if
much
they lose all three, they're so just I guess we can take a step back because the NFL on Tuesday did release the official playoff clinching scenario. So like I said before, the Dolphins can clinch a playoff spot with a win. I mean that's the easiest way. Win and you're in. They can clinch the AFC East most simply with a win and a Bills loss. The tricky thing, and we want to say this for part of the second half, but the tricky thing is that the Bills are just 2 games ahead with a head-to-head win over them. So the Dolphins really need to be for their sake and for the sake of fans, they need to be in a spot where they're not going into week 18 just 1 game ahead. They need to have this wrapped up by week 18. And it's tough because to do that, they're either going to need, a win and a loss along the way, a win for themselves and a loss from the Bills. The Bills have a very easy schedule coming up. They're playing the Chargers on Saturday night without Justin Herbert, fired coach. So who knows what's going to happen there? I believe they have the Patriots as well. So it's like can't really count on the other teams to do your business for you. You might have to take care of your business on your own. But I'm, I don't know about you, but it's going to be really interesting because this has turned out, past couple games, they did trip up against the Titans, but we haven't really seen them face that top tier competition since I would say the Chiefs game. I mean, if I'm remembering correctly, I mean, just the Chiefs. The Chiefs is probably like the last top opponent that they faced.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because it was
After that,
before,
they're playing the Jets twice, the Raiders, the Commanders.
right, right.
So it's been a while since we've seen that elite competition, and I think that we saw a kind of a tale of two sides of the ball. We saw the defense really step up. That was the first time that they were healthy. We saw them step up and play one of the best games of the season on their end against Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, and then we saw the offense struggle a lot until late in that game. So these these 3 teams that they're playing, like strong offense, like these are well-rounded teams. It's not, like a very one-sided team, lopsided team in terms of strength. Like these are very, I mean, as complete as you can get. I know the Cowboys just, struggled, and we'll talk about them in the second half. I know they just struggled, but they have offensive and defensive firepower. The Ravens have offensive and defensive firepower. So like both sides of the ball are going to be tested in their own rights over these next 3 weeks. And for me, I want to see if, like, all right, with the defense, they've looked good without Jalen Phillips, but when you play a Lamar Jackson, when you play a Josh Allen, who they've really struggled against in recent years, even when you play Dak Prescott, like when you play those upper echelon quarterbacks, is this something it's just legit. I mean, we saw it a month or two ago against Mahomes, but I want to see if that's for real. And obviously on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, whenever they've played a really strong defense on the road, they struggled. So obviously the Cowboys, they're going to present their issues this weekend. But I'm really looking ahead to not looking ahead, but looking forward to that Week 17 matchup when you get to a road environment, a true raucous road environment, and who knows. That could be a 425 game. That could be an 8-15 game. I don't know, but it's going to be loud in Baltimore. They're going to be jacked up for that game. I want to see how the offense looks because they've been able. I've seen them make like adjustments. Like we see it against the Jets. We've seen it in previous games. But when you have that crowd noise and when you have kind of everything going against you as an offense, are they as composed? I thought that them looking as good as they did without Tyreek Hill, really the passing game more so than the running game. The passing game looking as fluid as it did without Tyreek Hill, that was, something that for me, if I'm a Dolphins fan, I feel very optimistic about that, plugging him back in and kind of getting rolling. But yeah, I mean, this, McDaniel was talking about, the narratives. He kind of joked that he told players to tell any media member who asked about narratives this week to, politely, with all due respect, F off. Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah, yeah. F off was the verbatim what he said. It was just joking. But I completely understand the sentiment, but to
Well,
counter that,
yeah, there's an easy way to do that. The
exactly.
bet, yeah, it's on Sunday. I
Exactly.
mean,
And for all the talk about, like it was a great win, but the Dolphins didn't acquire all these players and make these trades and give out all this money for wins against the Jets in week 15. They did this
well,
for this type of stretch.
right, not the Jets as quarterback by Zach Wilson or whoever, the corpse of whatever Jets quarterbacks they've been dragging out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this, they should be jacked up. This is a great opportunity for them. Yeah, and if
They control their own
they're
destiny. They control their
right. I
destiny.
mean,
If you win the next three games, you're
they
the number one seed. That's
right. You win your number one seed. You win the next two. You win the next
you win the
two. You win
division.
the division.
Yeah.
So, and with a head on the number one on the number one seed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is they should be all jacked up about this. This is a tremendous opportunity for them to to be as good as to play as well as they think they are good. And I think it's going to be an interesting game for both sides because obviously Dallas is kind of in the same boat over there, and they're trying to win a division. Maybe keep pace for a number one seed if San Francisco somehow
Yeah,
slips up.
they've got life. I was going to say, you talk about this second half, but they've got life too. They've got a lot to play for as well, especially after Philly kind of fell apart late, on Monday Night Football. So there's a lot on both sides to play for. They just got embarrassed. Yeah.
And so yeah, this looks like a tremendously interesting game. And the Dolphins' response was, like you said, it was exactly what you needed to do. Look, that this is, you go out and you slap around the team you're supposed to slap around. You do what you're supposed to do. You do it how you're supposed to do it. It's not the Dolphins' fault that the Jets, have managed to somehow have no quarterback and have, not somehow that one got injured and they spent a second round pick on, that year's Jamarcus Russell. And so, that's not their fault. They showed up, they did what you got to do. And I thought it was necessary to do. I thought it was very good to do it with, Jalen Waddle having a big game, Tua having a very good statistical game.
Yeah, that was kind of a narrative busting game because everyone was like, "Oh, he's propped up by Tyreek," and it was like, "Hey, he looked pretty good without Tyreek."
And he didn't look great on Black Friday when they up there. I mean he threw them a touchdown pass too. So that was how you wanted to see it done. You wanted to see Bradley Chubb having a huge game after the whole tennis the whole of the Tennessee game you can discuss, but that one play was
It was kind of
really,
like one of the lasting
really
images of
bad.
that game. Like it didn't
Yeah,
cost them the game. It was one of those lasting images and those kind of turning points that when you look back, like that was one of those moments that resulted in the final outcome that we
right,
saw. And
right, right.
he was a
And
professional about it. Post game and after obviously last game he definitely put that to the
right,
side.
right. He came out and said, okay, now I'm going to be. That's the Bradley Chubb you want to see as both a player and a leader and all that. So okay, now everything should be kind of behind them in that respect. Now you're just looking forward to Dallas, and I'm sure they're hoping to have a reasonably healthy roster to go at the Cowboys
Yeah.
with. So, yeah, it's going to be a tremendously interesting game for the Dolphins, and probably the most interesting regular season game around here in a while. I think even more, this deep in the season. Here, I mean, obviously the Buffalo game up there last year in December was up there, and but I just think I feel like this game has a lot going for it, and I think it's going to tell a lot about both teams, or each team rather. So,
No, most definitely. Yeah, we'll definitely
pretty
talk a little bit more to close out the pod in the second half. But yeah, there's a lot of very interesting storylines that I want to get into with that. But yeah, I mean, it was a great bounce back effort. But again, for all the talk about narratives and perceptions, whatever, this is the stretch where you prove yourself, and we'll see if they can
yeah.
do that starting this weekend. All right, we're gonna take a short break, but when we come back on the other side of things, the Dolphins have a two-game lead in the AFC East, but the Buffalo Bills they're right in the rear view. They're coming right behind the Dolphins. And this three-game stretch will be pivotal to keep them at bay. How worried should the Dolphins be about Buffalo? We're going to talk about that and more. Stay locked with us, and we'll be back soon. What's going on, everybody? Still here on the Dolphins In Depth podcast with David Neal, talking all things Dolphins. The first half, we talked about the Dolphins' bounce back shutout win over the Jets. The daunting, telling three-game finish to the season that awaits them. We're going to focus in on the Dolphins' divisional rival, the Buffalo Bills, because the Dolphins, like I said, have a two-game lead in the AFC East. They can actually clinch the division this weekend, but the Bills might be the hottest team in the NFL. They've won three of their last four. Very impressive wins the last 2 weeks over the Chiefs and the Cowboys, we mentioned before. And again, with 3 games left, they're just 2 games behind. It was obviously a very critical Week 18 matchup coming. It looks like just the way the schedule is shaping up, it looks like that might be the most compelling game of the regular season slate, finale slate. It seems like it's gonna decide something one way or another, whether it's the number one seed for the Dolphins, the division for potentially the Dolphins or Buffalo, or maybe even Buffalo into getting into the postseason. A couple weeks ago we kind of left them for dead, but now the Dolphins just have a 61% chance to win the division according to the New York Times playoff simulator. The Bills 39%. Again, if the Dolphins drop another game prior to week 18, it seems like that week 18 game is probably going to be for the division because the Bills have a very easy slate, 2-game slate before week 18. They face the Los Angeles Chargers on Saturday night, and then they face the Patriots in week 17. Anything can happen. The Patriots did beat Buffalo earlier in the season. But this is looking like a very formidable team. I know a lot of Dolphins fans were kind of rooting for outcomes the past couple of weeks that would keep Buffalo out of the postseason. I want you to start off. How worried should the Dolphins be about Buffalo?
I mean, I think everybody should be worried about Buffalo. They're a talented team that seemed to have gotten their stuff together, and they kind of figured out, seem to figure out their offensive identity, and the way they beat Dallas was pretty impressive, and the kind of thing that coaches love to see in December. I mean, they pretty much pounded them, and yeah, they're definitely a team also because Josh Allen can be Josh Allen. I mean, he's going to turn the ball over, but he's also going to cause you all kinds of problems because he can make such. He's so physically talented. And he can make such tremendous plays, and he's got receivers that help him make those plays, and he's got his especially Stephon Diggs, obviously, and you got Cook at running back, who is cooking now, and
he is. I think he's second
yeah,
in the league in rushing. I mean, he's right there
yeah,
with Raheem Mostert out of
and
nowhere. Like,
so yeah, not the Cook we expected to be second in the league in rushing, right? And so when they're just kind of, I don't know what happened there. I don't know what coalesced, but
I don't know. It
they're
seems like
looking.
ever since there was. I don't know if you saw this, but a couple of weeks ago there was a big bombshell long form story
Oh
about
yeah, right, yeah,
Sean McDermott, some comments
right,
he made, the way he would kind of been leading the team, and ever since then they've kind of rallied behind him. They won
right.
2 straight games and they're looking pretty good doing it. I don't know, maybe that's it, but yeah.
They, one, who knows what kind of effect that had, if it was a galvanizing thing where they galvanized behind Sean McDermott, or if they this is this has happened also, where they're kind of like, okay, yeah, it got out that he's a little out there. We got to do this for ourselves. Let's come together as ourselves and do this for us, because we're nobody's getting any younger. They don't have so many shots at this, and so whatever it did, whatever reason, yeah, they've come together pretty well, and yeah, they're not a team. They really not a team you want to see. You really don't want to see many playoff teams in the playoffs, but they're really a team that, like, when they get going, they're tough to deal with. They're tough to stop, and they're tough to. And when you try to keep up with them, with your offense, they turn you over. If something bad happens, they're yeah. I think everybody's kind of hoping somehow that they trip up against the Chargers or Patriots, and then the Dolphins take care of them in the season finale, and somebody else sneaks in the side door, and the playoff bus leaves without them. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this. I think that there's two. I'll start with the division because it's looking increasingly like the Dolphins are going to have to beat the Bills in Week 18 to win the division. Unless they're going to win their next 2 games. Like this final 3-game stretch is so fascinating because there's so many outcomes for the Dolphins right now. And I've been like looking at the schedule and trying to like crunch the numbers. Kind of like number 2 pencil it. I think the Dolphins they more or less have to beat the Ravens in week 17 to get the AFC's number 1 seed because they're 1 game behind right now. If they fall back 2 games, they have to win week 17. If they're tied, going into week 17, they obviously have to win that game. So they more or less have to win that game. So like I would say like obviously you want to win I would say you definitely want to win all the games. Like you want to put your best foot forward and win all the games. But I'm personally of the opinion that the 49ers are going to beat the Ravens on Christmas Day. And if the Dolphins take care of business, just my opinion, I was gonna say people that are listening, but your facial expression says that you might disagree with me. But I'm just of the belief that
No, I actually don't. I think, okay, yeah, that's entirely possible. I mean,
yeah, and if the Dolphins take care of business on Christmas Eve against Dallas, just hypothetically, if that happens, you're tied. Week 17, whoever wins that is in the driver's seat. It has a one. Well,
yeah.
I think it'd be dun dun da da da. I don't think I was gonna say it'd be
Yeah,
Sunday
I
night.
know.
You got the
I
wrong
still play
jingle.
I still play Monday Night Football music as my run up music on Sundays.
Wrong jingle,
Um,
but all good. But yeah, but
yeah,
like
yeah,
again,
I know.
under that scenario, week 17, if you take care of business and the Ravens lose on Christmas to the 49ers, week 17, you're tied. Winner of week 17, they're in prime position for that. And in that case, you'd already have clinched the division as well. So it's like these next 2 games are just so like it's easier said than done. But if the Dolphins can hunker down, take care of business at home against Dallas, I think they're a slight favorite right now. They're probably going to be, they're probably going to be underdogs, road dogs, week 17. But if you can get a big win, like if you can take care of these next two games right here, there's not as much pressure. I think you'd still probably have to. I mean, I think that just off the top of my head, you'd still probably play your guys in week 18. Well, I don't even think you need to. If you win these next two games and Baltimore loses these next two games, you've clinched it. You've clinched it because you're up one game heading into week 18. But there's so many different outcomes, which is why this is so interesting. But yeah, like these next two games are just so important because if you take care of business right there, you don't even have to worry about like you don't want to be in that spot. Like you don't want to be, I know you're at home, but you don't want to be week 18. Josh Allen's coming to the building who is just really owned the franchise the past couple of years, well, since his second year in the league, honestly. You don't want to be in that spot because anything
No.
can happen. Like
Yeah.
anything can happen. Um, from the actual team to team matchup, it's very interesting because like when Buffalo was going through their struggles and then Miami started to kind of ascend, and obviously they tripped up in some games against Philly, against KC and Germany. Like they were still kind of ascending. And I was thinking like from a matchup perspective, this is great because for all the talk about the Dolphins injuries, and they've dealt with a lot. Buffalo has had some injuries, some key defensive injuries to those guys, and I thought that it was a great matchup because the Dolphins offense has, I mean, the whole team has struggled, but the offense has not looked the same, against Buffalo as they have against like most other teams. So matchup wise, I thought that it'd be great. Like I was just thinking, yeah, by the time week 18 comes, the Dolphins are gonna have this figured out. I'm not so sure of that because, like you said, the Bills have a new dimension now where they can run the ball. Again, James Cook is second in the NFL in rushing yards. Even ahead of Raheem Mostert, only behind Christian McCaffrey, I believe. So they have a new element where they're running the ball very well. They're playing way better defense than they were earlier in the year. I mean, you just don't want to you don't want to leave it up to that week
No.
18. Like you just don't want to leave it to that.
You never
But
want to leave anything up to a one game against a talented team in any sport.
yeah,
If you can, take care of business beforehand, you do that
yeah.
because, one game, talented team, or a single great player.
And the margin for
Ooh,
error is it's really close to zero now, honestly, because you're already one full game behind for the AFC's number one seed. And if you lose any game prior to week 18, then you're pretty much counting on an upset. You're counting on one of the bigger upsets of the year, in the Chargers or the Patriots in order to kind of fend off the Bills for the division. Um, so yeah, I mean, we talk about the 3 game stretch. These next 2 games, like we're kind of know where we're at with this team in the next 2 weeks. That's what makes it fun. It's kind of crazy to imagine we're already at week 16, but time flies when you're having fun, I guess. And that brings us to
or breathing.
or breathing, both of those. True that. And that brings us to this, like you said, probably one of the more, I guess, bigger games in recent Dolphins history. Obviously, they're playing, it's the 425 slot, Christmas Eve, playing the Cowboys. A lot of eyes are going to be on them. It's kind of the narrative bowl. I'm trying to see if I can find this CBS Sports stat. I think it's, let me find it. Give me a second. Okay, so I saw this very interesting tweet the other day about the matchup between the Dolphins and the Cowboys, and the fact that here it is. It's the first game in NFL history between teams with 20 plus combined wins, but one or fewer wins versus teams above 500. The Cowboys are 1-3 versus teams above 500, 9-1 against teams 500 or below. The Dolphins are 0-3 versus teams above 500, and 10-1 versus teams 500 or below. This is the narrative bowl. Like I kind of like I made that name. I'm gonna like patent it or whatever. It's the narrative bowl because we kind of joked about it before, but the Cowboys are kind of like the NFC Dolphins. Like they're
Yeah.
very good at home. They're very good against bad teams, but when they face some stiffer competition, they're not the same team. And we kind of saw that with the Cowboys, obviously, against the Buffalo. We've seen it with the Dolphins, against Buffalo, against Philly, against KC. One of these teams is gonna like kind of like go into Christmas with like a monkey off their back. Like they're gonna be feeling good. The other team is gonna like face the same old narratives and questions. Um, I will say, before the season, I said the Dolphins were gonna win this game. I felt pretty good about it throughout the season. I didn't feel as good about it after the Titans loss, but I will say, seeing the way that Buffalo was able to run the ball against Dallas, and especially like on the outside, run like the zone run type runs that McDaniel calls, that does give me confidence that the Dolphins will be able to move the ball against the Dallas defense. They have a great pass rush. They have some very opportunistic cornerbacks, but with opportunistic
They can
cornerbacks
be
comes
had.
exactly. Deron Bland, crazy like NFL record for most pick sixes in a season. He might get one off Tua, but they might get one off him. Stephon Gilmore, obviously a great cornerback, but I think that I like that matchup on defense. I like that matchup as well. It's going to be interesting to see like how well Dallas can run the ball against Miami because like I feel like some of the teams that have really had success against the Dolphins defense, I'll say two things. They've been able to run the ball really well, and they've had athletic quarterbacks who can make plays off script. I'm not sure how much Dak is going to be able to do the off script stuff. He can do it, but I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do it like a level of like Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. It'll be interesting. Again, it'll be interesting to see how well they run the ball. They kind of keep that pass because like the Dolphins pass rush is like their back end is too good with Ramsey, and then if Xavier Howard can come back, their back end is just too good. They hold it down that those guys up front can get to you. But I do think that this is a game. It's going to be very interesting because Dallas is coming off a very embarrassing loss, and they have a lot to play for in terms of potentially the number one seed, potentially a top two seed. But the Dolphins are very good at home. The Cowboys are not. I think we're going to get a very fun, high scoring game. Maybe something along the lines of 38, 34. I think a lot of points are going to be scored because I just think that the offenses are just too good. Um, but I'm going to take a Dolphins win. I think it's going to be a statement victory for the Dolphins, like a statement, a narrative busting win for the Dolphins. What say you?
Whoa, this is tough.
It's the narrative bowl, man. Like,
Yeah, the Open Carry Narrative Bowl, um, sponsored by the NRA. Dallas and Texas and Florida. Well, uh, I don't know if the Dolphins are going to be able to run the ball on Dallas the same way the Bills did.
really?
And I do think, however, I like the Dolphins passing game, the precision, the timing. Uh, I don't think Dallas will disrupt that as uh, as much as other teams and so I think the Dolphins are going to put up some points. Now on the other
This
side,
is a matchup. Sorry, but this is a matchup of two of the top two scoring offenses in the NFL. So like,
right?
I feel like
And
38 to 34 is gonna a little crazy, but not too crazy when you look into the numbers they've been putting up.
and well, somewhere in there, somebody's going to get because there's going to be a turnover. Somebody's going to run one. They're going to get a fumble. There's going to be a short field. Somebody's going to run something back. That's going to happen. Uh, uh, when Dallas has the ball, I think Dak has. I think the pass rush can get to Dak, but I think when they get to Dak, I think Dak has more of ability to get out, and then things start getting scrambly and funky, and I don't know if they're going to be able to run the ball very well on the Dolphins. I don't see that happening. So, yeah, I agree with you. High scoring. I was almost going to go 38-35, but I'm going to take it back a little bit. I'm going to go 31-27, and ooh, boy, I'll go the home team. But this is not a game. As much as I like to bet, and
Nah, this is I
I
don't bet this one.
this
Hey man, I know
I
you just
I
launched Hard Rock. Casino, the Hard Rock app. Nah,
No.
wouldn't touch that one.
No,
Wouldn't touch that one.
there's some other games that they put up some foolish lines on. There's some you can take their money on. This one, nah. I'd stay away from this one unless I had a real good 1 o'clock. um, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it opened up as a pick 'em, like to kind of drive how close this game is. It opened up as a pick 'em. Usually, the home team gets 3 points. There, essentially, we're more or less saying that the Cowboys were 3 points better on a neutral field. It's kind of swayed to the Dolphins. I haven't checked, but I know yesterday it was like 1.5. So I mean, it's very narrow. And that I mean that just speaks to how evenly close these teams are. So
that also speaks though to bettors, especially casual bettors, have
they
recency
respond.
bias.
Yeah, so obviously after the
So
blowout win, there was a lot of money that
right,
was thrown on the dog. Yeah, I
you
know, but
they watched Dallas getting punked, and they were like, oh, but no. We got to go with the team that just shut a team out 30-0. It's not a team that got rolled.
yeah,
So
but still
yeah, I
two
mean,
very
yeah. Oh
evenly
yeah,
matched teams.
yeah.
Again, the top two scoring offenses in the NFL. Two very stingy, opportunistic defenses. Um, hey, it's the narrative. We're either going to be talking about a big win for the Dolphins, or all hell's going to break loose because it's going to be another loss to a team with a losing to a winning record. But yeah, I mean, fun times. I mean, the Dolphins are right in it. They control their destiny at the end of the day. And
Uh,
whether we're going to sit here in 2-3 weeks and say, hey, the Dolphins made the most of this opportunity, or they put themselves behind. But either way, it's not like they have nobody else to look at but themselves.
exactly.
Everyone is right in front of them.
And they're home. It's Christmas Eve. They got to be happy about that. I mean, because nobody really wants to travel around that, 23, 24, 25, 26. Nobody wants to be on the road for those
Yeah, I'm
games.
glad we got 2 straight years, Christmas weekend, Christmas
Yeah.
Day games. I mean, wasn't a fan of the Christmas Day game, but
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
least
Yeah.
at least it was
At
home
least it's
last year.
home. Home.
So
Yeah.
no complaints there. Certainly no complaints for the Dolphins. They get to finish
Yeah.
again. I think 4 of their last 5 at home, so a real opportunity starting this weekend. All right, that brings us to the end of another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I want to thank you guys as always for tuning in. Reminder to subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, like, share, comment, as well as subscribe to the Miami Herald. The Dolphins are
That
back
one,
at it.
the Herald. Subscribe to the Herald.
That one. The Dolphins are back
Yeah.
at it on Wednesday in preparation for the Cowboys. Mike McDaniel will be talking to us. We'll be talking. We'll get some injury updates. The Dolphins, they were beat up last weekend, but they should be getting some guys back. We'll have all your latest Dolphins updates, so definitely stay locked to Miami Herald website. We'll be back next week to recap another weekend of Dolphins football. But until then, you guys take care. Happy holidays.